record on this computer. All right, so I guess we're going to just record chapter 8 of Robinson. All right, go ahead. So what does anybody got to say about chapter 8 of Robinson?
Was that there was a lot of different liberal groups, such as United Civil Front, Russia, or United Civil Front, Russia United Labor Front, psychedelic fascist pseudo-revolutionary party, but they were never actually able to consolidate in an effort to defeat United Russia. So United Russia was just able to stay in power.
Right.
I gather from.
Okay. Why don't we go back just a little bit further? So before United Russia, so the book talks about how, oh wait, I'm in the wrong chapter, hold on. So the book.
Just an FYI, my Wi-Fi might cut out at some point because we have tornado warnings right now.
Oh, okay, no problem. I hope you don't have a tornado.
So do I.
Stay safe, Matt.
Thank you. We live right on the nature preserve, so if anything happens, it's not going to be great. But
yeah. Oh gosh, do you have a basement?
No.
Oh crap.
And we have a pond in our backyard too. So yeah.
Okay. Well, be safe, man.
Thank you.
So they talk about how modern democracy, the first line, it's really important. So it's a good line to open up with. Modern democracy is based on the existence and health of political parties. Right. And so this is obviously like one of the biggest problems in relation to the health of post-Soviet Russia. Right. So what was some of the problems in the Yeltsin years, or like, you know, between like pre-Yeltsin, post-Yeltsin, or pre-Yeltsin, Yeltsin?
Water right outside.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Okay, but I'm here. All right. So anyway, so what was like happening? Hold on. Recording. Are we recording? Yes, we're recording. So what was going on sort of like pre-Yeltsin and then into Yeltsin in relation to the parties?
The parties were like politically ineffective.
Right.
And there was relatively little interaction between the political parties. It was mostly between the political parties and the government, which whenever it says that in the book, I actually didn't really understand that, because wouldn't an interaction between a political party and the government be an interaction between a political party and the majority political party, if that makes sense?
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying, but it's like, so what was happening was, so pre-Yeltsin, the political parties, they weren't really, they couldn't interact really with the system because it was a single party system. Right, if that makes any sense. Okay. And so they were mostly, you know, sort of acting more like a kind of like a movement, right? So like they would sort of like organize sort of like around these ideas about pushing forward perestroika. Later, these groups would form into what would become Democratic Russia, right? And eventually, what they were really doing is that they were mobilizing people, okay, and they were kind of acting in sort of like a parallel with the system, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Okay, because again, this was like a single party government and they were pushing for something different, right? If that makes sense. And so um, uh, once Yeltsin was outside of that system, okay, and he was part of like that Democratic Russia party, right? Number one, it was more personalized party, right? And it was formed around him, okay? And number two, it was sort of acting in parallel. And, you know, the point of it was to sort of act in opposition to the state, to act to sort of push out the state, right? And it wasn't really acting together with it. Okay, that's how you kind of get this sort of like parallel system where you had, you know, Yeltsin ends up getting elected president. You know, they're doing things sort of at the same time, right? Where the Soviets decided, well, you know, we're going to have, they were reacting to them, right? But they weren't necessarily interacting with them per se, right? Because of the circumstances in the country. So they realized they had to do a popular vote and, you know, stuff like that. But it wasn't quite the same as dealing directly with them as equal players and, you know, stuff like that. Okay. They weren't operating in the same system and stuff like that. So, and then when you get to the Yeltsin era, it was kind of still the same way, but different, right? Because when we get to Yeltsin, right, all of these people who were part of democratic Russia, they fragment, right, into multiple parties now, because now they're trying to find, you know, they're no longer opposed to the state, okay, because the Soviet Union, the thing that they were opposed to is gone now. Now they're all trying to find their own place in this new system. They're all looking for like personal power, right? They think that maybe they can create their own party, okay? And they're trying to sort of carve all this out. You're also finding within that system new parties forming along the political spectrum. So you're finding people that are not just liberal, right? Democratically minded people. You're finding now hardline conservatives, fascists, even, right? You know, like the Liberal Democrat, Zhirinovsky, etc., ultranationalists. You're finding, you know, the communists, even though they were banned, right, under Yeltsin, they had to find new ways to sort of represent themselves, right? So they find, they break up into different parties. There's like the agrarian Russia or something like this, and then they have the Communist Party, the Russian Federation, and stuff like that, right? So they find other ways, and so they're kind of fighting amongst themselves, right, and sort of jockeying for power, and they're not really coalescing around Yeltsin, right? So in some ways, they're kind of operating at different levels too, if that makes any sense. It was very chaotic.
Well, Yeltsin at the time too was kind of like the puppeteer with like the whole thing, right?
Right.
Like he was
Yeah.
kind of pulling the strings on everyone.
Right. Yeah, he definitely was. You know, he kind of enjoyed, you know, sort of playing people against each other and just sort of seeing how it was all going to sort of play out. But he was trying to, you know, get people to coalesce around him that, you know, those that he felt he could trust, right? Like we talked about in a couple of chapters ago, you know, the ones he knew he could trust, he was getting those people around him into positions of power in different places in government. However, within the parties, it was much more difficult because of the depth of fractionalization, right? So in the 1995 parliamentary elections in the Duma, you saw something like 43, 45 parties, political parties. I mean, could you imagine trying to have an election like that, right? And all of those votes, right, in the initial voting, they're going to all of these different parties, okay? But they're all not gonna make it in the Duma, okay? And so you end up with a lot of wasted votes, and you know, they had this screwed up system with the mixed the mixed voting, you know, with the first past the post with some of the things, and then, you know, the PR system, you know, where some of the votes in the Duma were set for, you know, the PR voting system, you know, the proportional representation and all of that. And it just sent the wrong messages, right? So a lot of the people in the Duma just felt like, I'm just gonna go out there and I don't know anything, I don't owe anything to my party, right? I'm just gonna go be myself, and I'm gonna promote myself